In today's episode, we level up to 9th level games.
Welcome to DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show. Level up your RPG campaigns by filling yourself with stories and knowledge. Explore topics from archaeology to film history to writing to literature and much, much more. This is DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show.
Welcome to the show. My name is Matt, and I am your host. This is the podcast where we learn how to become better game masters and better role players by filling ourselves with stories and knowledge. You know, guys, I have been doing this show for a while now, like a year and a half, which kind of blows my mind. I've been able to interview some incredible guests. Just blows my mind. Just seeing the quality of the guests that I can get just by sending people an email or tweeting at somebody. Everyone has been so generous with their time. I just want to thank all my guests. Since I have been doing this show for a while, I've been considering doing a solo episode 1 week here when we cross into 2021, maybe kind of like a state of the podcast address or something like that, just to let you know what my thoughts are and what my goals are with the show, because producing these episodes is a ton of work. Even though I enjoy it and I have fun talking to all of my guests, producing this show is pretty tough. And so I may just do, like I said, a solo episode where I talk about some of my goals with the podcast and how you can help out a little bit more and ensure that each and every Wednesday there is a DiceGeeks.com podcast. Now, after I've said all of that stuff, let's get on with the interview. My guest today is the co-founder of 9th Level Games, Chris O'Neill. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us.
When were you first introduced to tabletop role-playing games?
1983, maybe 82. I remember the first time I saw the Dungeons & Dragons red box on the shelf at Walden Books and lost my mind. So I'm pretty sure that was 1983. So,
well, I started playing in 1982 when I was 9. So there you go.
So we are of an age then.
Yes. And I find that is true with a lot of the game designers and that I've been interviewing on the podcast. There is a certain age group, and it's actually interesting because we deal with a lot of indie game designers. Mm-hmm. So we don't always find that to be true. A lot of the people that we work with are we work with a lot of women. We work with a lot of younger people. So it's kind of a very different experience. There's still a bunch of white dudes that remember that, picking up the red box at the Walden Books, but there is some hope that we're getting other places. Yeah. So when you saw that red box in Walden Books, what made you lose your mind?
I never, so the thing is I'd heard of Dungeons and Dragons. The cartoon had come out and was really obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And then I think I had gotten some Endless Quest books.
Oh, okay.
And I was really into those. Rose Estes is a huge influence on me. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw that box and I realized that, like, oh, I can just buy this. Like, I don't need anyone's permission. I don't need anything else. And unlike a lot of other things at the time, it was relatively affordable. I'm pretty sure my first Dungeons and Dragons box cost $12. And that was like 2 weeks of delivering newspapers. I was a pretty poor kid, so that was something that was affordable. It wasn't like buying a video game. One of the things that's actually really funny is a lot of people, I don't think, especially the kids these days, don't. You buy a video game today for $40 or $50, but the thing is in 1983, the video games cost $40 or $50.
Yeah.
And that was $40 or $50 in 1983 dollars. They were really expensive.
I think people do tend to forget that. If I'm trying to remember what the Atari games and stuff like that, they were very expensive.
In fact, when Yard's Revenge first came out, it was $39.99.
Yeah.
And that was in 1981.
Yeah. I know that'd be like $100 or something.
It'd be like, I think it's like $80 in today
$80
or something
okay.
like that.
Yeah.
$78 or something like that, but still,
yeah.
super worth it. There's Revenge is the best game ever. So
yeah, I love those Endless Quest books too. I think what was it, Revolt of the Dwarves, and
which I believe is number 5.
Is that one? What was the one with the frost giant and the frost dragon on the cover? What is that?
Mountains of Madness. Mountain of Mirrors.
Mountain of Mirrors. That's right. I love that book.
Yes, by Rose Estes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mountain of Mirrors.
Yeah. I love that book so much. That was awesome.
Yeah. The Dungeon of Dread, which is number 1, is my favorite. I actually just read a really interesting article, or not an article. I read a Facebook set of Facebook stuff from Frank Metzger, where he was talking about the fact that he was the editor for that line, and it was kind of new for Rose Estes to be writing. And so, like, literally wrote 3 or 4 of them, but like the 4th one she wrote was Dungeons of Dread, which was actually the first one released.
Yeah,
because it had gotten better at it, and they wanted to like go best foot forward with the line.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's
really
cool.
And West Coast books were a big influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the art too. The covers were fantastic. Yeah,
well, it's some of the greatest fantasy artists of all time, did that fantasy art, and the same amount of care was taken in those covers as was in the box sets and the hardcovers.
Yeah,
I recently actually bought a bunch of the old Endless Quest books and had them sent to my nephews during the COVID lockdown, because I was like, you're 10. This is, you'll enjoy this.
Yeah. Well, I know Matt Forbeck is now writing the Endless Quest books.
Yes, Matt's a great guy and a great writer. And I was very jealous when I heard that he was writing them.
Yeah, I had him on the podcast talking about a couple of them, and it was really cool. Well, now, so you discovered Dungeons and Dragons, then I assume then you started playing it and possibly haven't even stopped?
You know what? I don't play Dungeons and Dragons anymore. I played it for a really long time.
Uh-huh.
I played it all the way up and through high school. I was there in first edition, and then I played Basic, and I love Basic. I still think Basic's probably the best version of the game. Played first edition. I was actively playing when second edition came out. Then it was the early 90s, and we did a lot of Palladium.
Yeah.
And then we started making our own games. So once we started making our own games, it kind of pulled us away. We've always been on the more indie side, so I've always been trying new games, but less interested in Dungeons & Dragons. We played when third edition came out, and 3.5 was kind of a downer. We played in fourth edition for a while and enjoyed it, and then I really, really don't like fifth edition.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
why is that?
So I think that there's a lot of positive stuff in fifth edition, but a lot of it is just the stuff that we've all been playing. If you've been actively looking at other games, like some of the best things in it are just the stuff out of Burning Wheel and Dungeon World, or those pieces. And then it's the things that they decided to go back in time and to kind of re-embrace from the OSR side of things are the bad things. I play a fifth edition game with Brian C.P. Steele and some other people online, and like an actual play show. And when I found that the warlock gets their spells at a different time, they get their spells back with a short rest, wizards get them back with a long rest. That's just dumb. I mean, that doesn't add anything to the experience. It just overcomplicates the experience. And that's like kind of the core. I think that really sums up my dislike of fifth edition.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of unnecessary, the things that people point to and they're like, but that's really good. Like, like the backgrounds. Well, yeah, I mean, backgrounds are in most indie RPGs. It's not a thing. That's not a new concept, right?
Well, I've been really enjoying 5th edition here for the last few years, but I do see what you're saying. I do think every once in a while you do come across something where you're like, that just seems a little kind of unintuitive, or just a little bit extra complicated, and instead of, where it could have been streamlined just a little bit more.
Have you played 13th Age?
I have not. It is on my list. It's on my wish list of when I have, more time in the day, or 8 days in the week or something like that. But right. I have not.
13th Age is an interesting idea because it's very much the great stuff from 3rd and 3.5, with some of the clean structure of 4. And a lot of the functions and the things that people like about 5th edition. And people just didn't catch on to it because it doesn't have the name Dungeons and Dragons on the front. If I wanted to play a Dungeons and Dragons style game, which is a different kind of game, it's not necessarily just fantasy game, it's a different kind of game that I want to drive one character over a very long period of time kind of game. I think that I would play 13th Age, or maybe even something from the like the Cypher system world. I think they're cleaner and better implementations of what 5th edition is. And I was never a Pathfinder guy, so
yeah.
So Pathfinder 2 doesn't really do a whole lot for me. So even though I like their world, I think their world's neat. I just, again, you talk about complexity for complexity's sake. not our favorite thing.
I've only had minimal experience with Pathfinder. I GM'd like 2 kind of short sessions, and basically all we did was I was just trying to work out the rules in combat. So I just threw my some combat at my players, and we just kind of ran almost just like a combat sim, just trying to seeing how that worked. And I thought it was interesting, but yeah, it was. I know for at least for a couple people playing, they thought it was way too much.
We with our designs, we spend a lot of our time asking, where is the fun? Right? And that's true in both role playing and in board games and card games for us. And one of the things that I think is often forgotten is that Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of the fun for people is the meticulous record keeping.
Yeah.
Like literally what people enjoy is copying their character sheet and making a change to it.
Yeah.
And that is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Like even just the idea of shopping for my equipment drives me up the wall. But when I was a kid, again, we talked about that red box that first time, looking at that one sheet that was like, here are the things you can buy. It is 10 silver pieces for a clove of wolfsbane. I was so excited to be like, I have wolfsbane. I don't know what it does, but in my pack, this mirror and these 6 iron spikes.
Yeah, well, of course they've tried to streamline that a bit as well with like the adventurer packs and things like that. But it is interesting though, like just thinking about that, because like I know sometimes I will say 5th edition here has a little some complexity here or there that I thought was a little strange, that might be as to why it was added or something like that. But you had mentioned Palladium games from the 90s.
Oh my God.
And I was just going to say I played well, I should actually say I tried to play Heroes Unlimited for a number of years. Our group did, and it was so complex. I mean, I love all the fluff, all the, like, you can make any superhero you want to make. Like, it is, you just open that book and it's just like powers. Like, you can't even think of a power they did not include in that book, and it's amazing. But then you get to the system and it was just like, I'm broken. Like after like several, 5 years trying to play, it was just like, I'm broke. You broke me.
And that's a game that's interesting because if you ever get a chance and you look at the original Palladium fantasy rule book, the first edition one, which I think is also from 1983, which is seems to be a theme here. Yeah. Which was basically Kevin Ciambata's home Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Mm-hmm. And so it's just Dungeons and Dragons with a whole lot of options, right? A whole lot of character options, different kinds of magics, different kind of races, different ways to roll your stats, all kinds of stuff. And that's the foundation point for the rest of the Palladium Megaverse. Mm-hmm. But the Palladium Megaverse is fun. Where the fun was in that was always this idea that every book had 10 new kinds of characters you could be, and 10 new ways to just screw up everything, because every character was its own completely unbalanced thing. Risk being the ultimate example, the fact that there was the Vagabond OCC, and on the next page was the Glitter Boy. So it was like I could be a guy that just walks around from town to town, and has nothing. Literally, my special ability is I have nothing. Or I could be a 10-foot tall guy in a robot mech suit with a gun that can destroy anything. And all that fun was in that character construction. That, can I do something? What can I build here? We played Rifts forever. That was high school. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we ever played Rifts, but I know one of the guys in my gaming group had all the Rifts books, and I remember looking at them and thinking, wow, this would be so cool, but I don't think we ever played. But we were playing, we played mostly Heroes Unlimited in the Palladium system. Of course, I tried Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Robotech game as well. But yeah, we were playing the Heroes Unlimited, and we tried playing that for a while, but and like I said, I think, like you were saying, all the character stuff is just amazing, and it is, but like, I do remember times when we got together, and we were younger, so we had more time. It was like, okay, we have 8 hours. Let's do something, and we got done with our characters, and that was it, right? And they were awesome, but that's all. That's as far as it went. we got the characters, but we couldn't play.
We played Rifts. We played a Rifts campaign for most of high school, and we played a Rifts campaign that involved all the other world books. So there were characters from Heroes Unlimited, and there were. I played like a Superman-esque character at one point that was like a guy from Heroes Unlimited that like fell through a portal and ended up in Rifts first. And,
oh gosh,
I'm a huge fan of the creativity of the Palladium games. I would never play one now, but I just recently purchased a complete collection of the original Palladium fantasy books.
Oh wow!
Because the world's great. It's such a classic look at fantasy role playing.
Yeah. Well, I haven't really seen their fantasy games, but I'm sure it is fantastic because the worlds and the characters and all the stuff added into the game. I mean, it was just incredible. Like, still every once in a while, I'll get out the Heroes Unlimited second edition book and just flip it open and be like, oh yeah, you could make that character. Like, if I just think of an idea, it's just open it up and say, oh, yep, it's in that book. And it was just so incredible. But I think, when I hear, some people say, oh, the 5th edition character creation is too complex. That's when I'm like, oh, try to make a bionic character in Heroes Unlimited second edition. I mean,
I think, but that being said, that crazy bionic character in Heroes Unlimited in the 80s, as opposed to creating a character in 5th edition, if you didn't have 20 years of experience coming into 5th edition, it is daunting.
Yeah.
And it is so daunting compared to what 4th edition was, because 4th edition was just like, hey, pick a couple of these things, smash them together. Good to go. Let's rock.
Mhm.
And I was really sad to see that go and to see that leave.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, in our fantasy game, I can make a character in, a couple of questions.
Okay.
So,
but yeah, so maybe that's enough reminiscing for people who about
all of the children have turned off.
Yes.
Everyone below the age of 30 is like, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah. Like you're saying that like 5th edition isn't really complicated to make a character. And it's just like, it's not really, seeing as how I think I was up to like 10 sheets of paper and had a good, every night of the week in on a Bionic character in Heroes Unlimited. And it's just like, I don't even know I can't even remember if I finished him because you just had so many options. I could buy everything. I could buy every scanner and sensor that you could imagine and put them in them. It was awesome. But so, you have been mentioning that you are a game designer. So, why did you decide to become a game designer? Was that just a kind of just an outgrowth of that you just love playing so much?
Yeah, I think it was just an accident. If the younger Chris O'Neill had known that game designer was an option, I think it would have been very different. But when we got to, I got to the point, and the other co-founder of Ninth Level Games, Dan Landis, and I went to high school together, where we got to a point where we were just playing every game we could get our hands on. Because we were searching for something that wasn't there. And then, like most game designers, we just made our own game, and then that game was really bad, so we made another game, and that game was worse. And then it was the late night, then it was the early 90s, and so we were just making really bizarre stuff. And then then we started to actually get good at it, and then we made Cobalt Ate My Baby, and that was like a thing, and then one day turned around and was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm a professional game designer. Like, this is what we do.
Yeah. Could you tell us more about Cobalt Ate My Baby?
Sure. And on keeping with our looking back, the clock kind of thing, it was Dan and I had created a fantasy role-playing game called Adventure the World of Crozon, which is like the best fantasy heartbreaker name. Like, you know how bad that game is based on that title. And we were doing the convention scene, and we were showing it to people. And it was in this like dark time before 2nd edition was dying, and there wasn't any real fantasy games out there. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to play a monster or, something apocalyptic, you were good, but if you wanted to pick up a sword and fight an orc, you were in a bad place. And literally at Origins that year, Wizards of the Coast announced that they had bought TSR, and they were going to be bringing Dungeons and Dragons out, a new version of it. And so we just basically threw our game away, because how can we compete? But then we actually took a real hard look at what we were doing, and we were being kind of successful in getting people to play games at conventions. So we were like, why is it that people are playing our games? And one of the things is because we had kind of a fun twist. And so we decided to see, could we do something funny? And that's really where Kobolds came from. And in the late 90s and the first couple of years of this millennium, we just printed them out on paper and stapled them and folded them in half. And that's how Ninth Level started, which is, real different than now, except for the fact that it's not, because we still make zines. I just don't have to fold them by myself anymore.
Or go to Kinko's or something?
We still do a whole hell of a lot of work with FedEx. So FedEx Kinko's.
Yeah. Well,
it's much more cost efficient than owning a really nice color printer.
Yeah. No. I was just keeping with the throwback theme of some of what we had been talking about.
No, in fact, our first games were literally, I say sneak. I would just stay in the office late, and then I would print everything out on the office copier.
Uh-oh.
And then I would take it home, and we would hand staple things.
Oh gosh, just don't leave anything in the copy machine.
Oh yeah. People like, what is going on?
All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of, just of that, just a little bit, how much printing has changed and the publishing industry has changed since, even 2000 to today.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
We really started in 1999, and it is a completely different world.
Yeah,
in 1999, the first time we took a book to a printer to get it printed, we had done the layout in Quark Express.
Yeah.
And then we had saved it down on an iOmega zip drive, which for the young people at home was kind of like a forerunner to a flash drive. But it was the size of it was like five floppy disks stacked on top of each other. And it took rendering the book. I remember rendering the book took like 3 hours to do. And our latest book, the level 1 compilation that we did for Free RPG Day, I think I rendered the book in 30 seconds. I dropped it in it was all done in InDesign on a cloud, off of a cloud server. I uploaded it to a Dropbox, and the publisher picked it up out of that box and did all the work and shipped it, printed 15,000 copies and shipped it to Michigan without me having to do anything. So very, very different worlds.
Yeah. What do you think about now that the barrier to entry to releasing a role-playing game is a device in the internet?
I think it's great. I love the work that's out there and that people are doing. Most of my favorite games are little micro games that people are designing. I saw a great exchange the other day, and someone said like, "Hey, who should I talk to? Because I'm thinking about making this kind of role-playing game." And the overwhelming response was just write it and put it on Edge, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're new to this, in the past, people had to mortgage their homes in order to get a print run done. And now you can just put it out on the internet and get some feedback and see if it's worth spending some time on. Yeah, I mean, our latest game we actually ended up doing as part of the Zine Quest things on Kickstarter. And the focus on that was because we were like, well, we'll just give it a try. Let's see if people are into it. It's amazing what you can get done. And the communities that are out there that are supporting. One of the things that's really funny is I really like a lot of the stuff that's come out of the OSR side of the world. I don't like all of the people in the OSR world, but I like a lot of the products. And that stuff would have been amazing, but completely undoable 20 years ago. Like the audience would have been there, but you would never have been able to successfully make these micro products.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is just amazing that the level of creativity and the willingness of people to really put their stuff out there. I mean, you go to Drive Through RPG in the morning and you check it in the evening, and there are like 10 to 15 new free products, let alone all the other ones. Yeah. It's just unbelievable.
I mean, so one of the things that I don't like is free products. Mm-hmm. People especially in our chosen hobby, they undervalue their work. And when one person undervalues their work, it actually undervalues other people's work. It's a very complicated economics piece, but just being like, well, I just want to do this and I just want to put it out there is a position of privilege that a lot of people don't understand. It's great if you have a great job and you have enough free time that you can just make your own products and you can put it out there and you don't need any money back for it. That's not true for everybody. And at the same time, like actually paying for someone else's time, even if it's a nominal amount of money, it's, you know, it's I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say there.
Well, it has value. I mean, somebody's time has value. I mean,
yeah, all of this stuff has value. And one of the things that's actually really weird is one of the things that has gotten a lot of value in our industry is art. And artists have learned to, you know, say, this is what my art costs. But writers have not caught up, and designers have definitely not caught up. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, I mean, that is interesting. Obviously, I have my products and stuff out, and it is very difficult to actually charge what they're worth.
And part of that is because of that downward pull. Because so much of it is free.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that is free is, you know, worth what you're getting what you pay for.
Yeah. Well, but then there's other stuff. I mean, I've seen 350 page RPG books with all original art being offered for free. And I'm just like,
what, how?
Yeah. I have no idea. Like, I just don't even understand how that could be free. I mean, a one sheet PDF of, you know, some, you know, adventure idea or something. Hey, yeah, whatever. But
no, and I mean, like, so that's like a great example. Like, so like if here's some adventure props with a thing that I doodled. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great thing to do for free.
Yeah.
Right? But here's my complete game. It's 100 pages, you know, and it took me a year to write. Well, don't give that away for free.
Yeah. And I know I've talked to some people, and some people are just like, well, I didn't think anybody would pay for it. I didn't think it was good enough. And to them, I just try to say, well, no, it's good enough. Charge for it. you know, even if it's bad. I mean, there have been a lot of bad games and people charge for those. So I don't get the problem there.
That is so true.
Yeah. And then there are people, though, who are like, well, I just don't need the money. And I say, well, you know, my kids are hungry and I need the money, right?
You don't need the money, but the other creators do. Yeah. That's actually a really big problem in arts in general that a lot of people don't take into consideration.
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult. You know, we especially, you know, as game designers are in a pretty privileged position because of the fact that we're doing something in the leisure space. It's fun. We have a huge community that backs us up, and there's some great resources if you're new to it and all of these things that a lot of other art forms don't have. But at the same time, there is actually, you know, there's a lot of money out there and people are willing to spend it to buy the things that they want. And when you're making something that is, especially for a micro market, you know, you're making a specific thing. So you're like, oh, I made this adventure that's about, you know, very specifically post-apocalyptic, but they're giant teddy bears. There's like a bunch of people out there that very specifically want just that thing. And they'll be willing to give you money for it because nerds. Yeah. We're all nerds. And you talked about really bad games that people spend a lot of money for. Like that happens to be one of my obsessions. I love fantasy heartbreakers. I love the games that people made in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that were just bad, and they just didn't know it, you know? So I kind of collect them, right? So I feel that pain.
If you're able to do this, you know, full-time or even part-time or something like that, it is a great privilege to be able to, you know, to work in a field that you love. And so I feel that it is a privilege to work in a field like that. But that's to me, it still doesn't mean there isn't value being given, right? And if I provide you value, why not exchange the value, back, right?
Fair exchange of goods and services, my good sir.
Yes. All right.
Khajiit has wares if you have coin.
So while we're singing the praises of capitalism, so you started then ninth level games, and I'm sure you have more products than Cobalt's Ate My Baby.
We do. In fact, so we the company these days is 4 people. So Heather O'Neill is the CEO, and she runs the company and is a game designer. She's actually designing an RPG right now that's very interesting. But her primary focus is on board games. And then Adriel Lee Wilson and myself are kind of the RPG people. And then we have Dan, the co-founder, that's like kind of in the background. Our focus, we started back in 2013 when we brought Cobalt Get My Baby back. And then we did some board games. We did and some card games. And then in the last 2 years, we have completely refocused ourselves to push forward our Polymorph game system. And Polymorph is a new, very easy to learn, very easy to run role-playing system. And right now, the 2 primary products are the Excellence, which is a game where you play an excellent princess. You are the very best at something, and so you have a crown, and you're given a kingdom, and you get a sword, and you have to defend it. And the other one is called Mazes, and Mazes is a throwback to the novellas of the 60s and 70s. And it is an attempt to make a fantasy role-playing game that I wanted to play. It's presented only as zines, at least for right now, and it's real good. Okay. And those are our 2. In fact, Mazes actually just won the IGDN Indie Groundbreaker Award for Best Rules for 2020.
Oh, wow.
Or by the time this happens, it will have happened in the summertime. So,
well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
but they all run off the same thing. They all run off what we call the Polymer System.
Okay, could you describe the system a bit?
Yeah, it's actually very straightforward. So the idea in Polymorph is that each player you start out creating a character by saying, what role do I have in the party? And there's 4 distinct roles, and each one of those roles is assigned a specific die. So your ROLE is also your ROLL. So the D4 is the paragon, and it's the you are the very best at what you do. That's kind of I'm the thinking character. The D6 is the vanguard. That's you always want to be at the forefront of the action. The D8 is the fighter. You want to, hit it with your sword. And the D10 is the sentinel. You want to keep everyone safe. And those are the 4 roles in the Mazes game. And they can have different names in different Polymorph games, but the mechanics are the same. When you're doing an action, you always just roll your die, and you're rolling against the basic moves, which in Mazes are called books, boots, blades, and bones. So a books is 2 and 3. So if I want to roll books, what I want to do is I want to roll my die, and I want to roll a 2 or a 3. So if I'm a D4 or a D6, I have a pretty decent shot. If I'm a D10, I don't. Maybe I have an edge that gives me an ability to roll with advantage. So I'm going to roll 2 dice, and only one of them needs to succeed. If I ever roll a 1 on my die, if it's something that my class could do, it always succeeds. And then if I ever roll the top of my die, which we call a crown, so the 4 on the D4, the 10 on the D10, depending on the current environment in the game, I may or may not succeed. And that's kind of the core of the system. Now, in the Excellence, we spent a lot of time focused on the idea of what it's like to tell like a cozy cartoon story. And it's all about collaborative storytelling. But in Mazes, our focus is really on this idea of novella-style storytelling, where we begin the game at the door to adventure, and let's say you always begin right when the story starts. Like, I'm kicking in the door and we're heading into the dungeon. And it's a novella, so there isn't any expectation that we're going to see these characters again. So characters are very easy to make, very quick to go. They're iconic. It's not designed about like growing the character over time. And a lot of the functions are about explaining all of those things. And so it is a very tight, very easy to play system. In fact, we can generally get people up and running with character creation in less than 20 minutes and play a complete game in about 2 to 3 hours. That's kind of our focus.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds really cool.
We're into it.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of games coming out with the system, and we have a lot of other designers that are interested in designing for it. Which hopefully by the time this drops, some of those will be announced. We can't announce all their names right now, but our next game that's coming out is it's a polymorph game, but it's tonally more in line with Cobalt Ate My Baby. It's called Business Wizards. And it's a game where you play wizards that are stuck in corporate jobs.
Oh gosh.
It's a whole lot of fun. And if you've ever had a boring corporate job, you will super appreciate it.
So what are some things they get up to?
So one of the things is how Business Wizards, the frame of Business Wizards is you start out and you do a SWOT analysis. So you figure out what your team's strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And then you figure out what opportunities are in the market and what threats are trying to stop you. And then it's a round robin GM situation where each of you tries to basically destroy the rest of the team as they try to produce, something of value. The first test that my team and I played of it, our goal was we needed to stop the Orlando Magic because it turns out that the Orlando Magic was actually magic. That was the course of that. It didn't go well. A whole lot of basketball players died.
Oh no.
One of the things you do in that game is you pick which department you work for, and my character was an Ifrit that worked in the extra legal department. So he was an assassin. He was an assassin with fireballs. It was pretty good.
Yeah, that sounds really funny, and and a little too close to home that all of your coworkers are out to destroy you whenever you try to make something of value. That's a little too close to home for some people.
To real. I mean, it's basically like that's going to depend on your play group. I think a lot of groups will be, really focused on their objectives and not just on getting ahead. But the end of every game of that is a 360-degree review where everyone else has to give feedback on your annual performance review. So, actually, when this show drops, that book might be new and available in stores. So,
okay,
you can probably check that one out.
Yeah. Sadly, I think there's probably a few people listening who are like, "I do that all day. Why do I want to play this game?" Other than I get a fireball or something.
That's correct. It's actually really funny. There's two primary modes to play the game in. It's either it's the real world and we add magic, or it's the magical world and we add the real world. So they're both funny. It's really funny to be like, we're going to have this boring staff meeting, but at the staff meeting, we're just going to be a bunch of wizards talking about how cool our staffs are. Right. Or the opposite, which is it's like, oh, we're deep down in the dungeon and we're going to have like a deep conversation about humanoid resources, right? But like both sides of the equation are quite funny.
Okay. Humanoid resources?
Yes, humanoid resources. If you're going to be a PC, you need to know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh. No, that sounds really funny. And so then I guess you're going really all in on the polymorph system and you're just going to create different games and settings for it?
Yeah, in fact, I mean, one of the things really nice, like I said, there's other people other people that are designing games using polymorph. Pretty much the number one reaction that we get when game designers play it is, hey, I have an idea for a setting. It's like, yeah, I bet you do. There's actually 2 polymorph games in our level 1 anthology that was part of the free RPG day this year. One's called Savage Sisters. It's about barbarian swordswomen. And the other one is about being Alj in a tank. It's called In the Tank. And they kind of show you the breadth of the system and how easy it is to use. One of our goals with Polymorph is trying to enable people that are creative to create role-playing games without having to be the deep designer. Because what we've seen, I'm not going to name any games, but we've seen a lot of people that have great narrative chops come into the space and they just hack or mimic another game that's out there. And those games end up being not good because the core mechanics of those games are designed to emulate a very specific thing. And the math is very easy to get wrong. We see this the most with, I personally see this the most with Powered by the Apocalypse games. And so one of our real thing was to say, let's create a system that if there's something that I really love, if there's a setting that I really love, I can easily adapt a system that's going to work, right? And polymorph is it's hard to break. There are rule systems that have less rules, but every rule that's part of the core polymorph is super tested. We've tried it through, so many different iterations at this point.
Does it allow for kind of sustained play with the same characters over and over again, or is it more just kind of one shots and things like that, short things?
It definitely shines in the one shot and like convention level piece. For sustained play, it's really about what are we doing? If as part of sustained play, you need to see character improvement, right? It's not great at that. So in Mazes, which is the dungeon crawling game, which is the system that most people expect to see, that like leveling up, we have a rule called the rule of 3, which is if the game that we just played was the 3rd time that we saw this character, at the end of the game we get to add another edge, and that's literally the extent of experience in that game. Okay. That's it. That's all the advancement. And the reason for that is because it's focused on that more narrative. Now the thing is you could play a very long campaign in it as long as your expectation is that it's not, the characters aren't going to change. That there are more iconic characters. Okay. And with the excellence, we've seen that, which is very straightforward, but you can play the same princess over and over again because it's a cartoon. You don't have any expectation that tomorrow, library book princess is just going to all of a sudden have a rocket launcher. Like that's just not in the cards. Library book princess is always library book princess.
And I think that is an interesting, when you just brought that up, I think that is an interesting kind of point that I know we're kind of used to the idea of gaining more skill points and leveling up. And I almost say from video games, but I think it comes from Dungeons and Dragons, which then video games copied. Yeah. So, usually you'll hear people say it the other way around, but I think it all came from D&D.
No, it definitely all comes from D&D. And if you look at, if you get into the deep scripture on the role-playing or on the video game side, where the thinkers are talking about the history and where these things, they almost always lead it back to that early like idea of I'm trying to capture that spirit of the role-playing game on the computer.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I've interviewed at least one person here on the podcast who worked on D&D in the early 80s, and then he went on to work in video games all through the 90s and early 2000s. And and I think that's just, it makes perfect sense that a lot of the people who worked on D&D then went off and worked in video games. And so they took a lot of those ideas and things with them. And because it was a working formula, but like when you say, like when you're playing, a cartoon character, or, if you are, playing, something along those lines, those characters don't change. They're just,
Snake Eyes starts out awesome and he's never not awesome. Right?
Yeah.
You never see level 1 Snake Eyes. You always see level 20 Snake Eyes.
Oh my gosh. That is so funny because I almost said Duke from G.I. Joe.
Sure.
Right there.
Duke, right?
Yeah.
He's always Duke. He's always been good. He's always the best.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe is the perfect example of that, where all of them are the best.
Yeah.
In fact, I think one of the biggest mistakes they made in G.I. Joe when they made that movie was they tried to show growth. And it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
G.I. Joes don't grow.
Yeah.
They're in G.I. Joe because they're the best.
Yeah, exactly. They might get some new gadgets every now and then, or a new plane, but they're the same.
Well, and in mazes, and this is true in other, so Polymorph has a couple of different economies that you can attach to the core system to do different things. Mm-hmm. In mazes, the one is called treasure, right? So instead of having equipment or like this, we as a collective group have a thing called treasure. And we can spend treasure to produce the effects of equipment.
Okay.
So in that thing, right? Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Snake Eyes, he just happens to have a rocket launcher because that's what we need to take out that helicopter. Spend a treasure. That's what we need, right? Because that's how the story works.
Yeah.
It's not a permanent thing. We don't have any expectation that he's going to have that next time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. He'll need a grappling hook next time.
Correct. And I'll just spend a treasure next time for that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one of the things is interesting. You talk about that from the game side and the video game side. It's also very true that Dungeons and Dragons effect occurred and affected fantasy literature.
Yeah.
And again, you and I are of an age. So like the number of fantasy novels in the 80s and especially in the 90s that were really just first level character leaves his town, gains levels up, eventually becomes super powerful and goes back and kicks somebody's. Before that, the stories, the characters were not like that. They were fully formed characters that, Conan never levels. Stafford and the Grey Mouse are never level.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a flashback and you're like, oh, when I was a child.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of story, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a big focus in the Mazes books on that fiction emulation, that what we call the novella style, right? So,
yeah, I absolutely agree because, you would get perhaps maybe, like you were saying, the flashback to when the master swordsman taught them how to sword fight, but that's not when the story happens, right? The story happens.
No, right. Yeah, that's a flashback, right? It's a flashback to show me. And so in Mazes, there's actually a mechanic. So much like the treasure mechanic that drives from the player side, the maze controller side, the MC side has a pull called darkness. And whenever the players do stupid things, it adds to the darkness. Like if you split the party, it adds to the darkness. And the darkness is a tool for the GM. But the players can add to the darkness to do flashbacks because they want to add something into the story. Mm-hmm. So we just encountered this Bandit King, and it's like, hey, I'm going to have this flashback because that Bandit King is he's who killed my father, right? And especially, it can be, that flashback system could be a little overpowering in a long-term campaign. Mm-hmm. But in a system designed around the novella or that short story kind of feel, it's an amazing way to get player engagement and get people to care about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It works great at conventions. Like one of the things I always hate about a convention game is I'm given a character and the character has no reason to be doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
You gotta give me a reason. I don't even care if it's a dumb reason.
You want money.
Sure. After we've run all these campaigns of mazes or all these games of mazes now, one of the things that's great is that since treasure is a resource and trying to convince players that, spend your treasure, it's a resource that you have to play in the game, because you're not going to buy better equipment with it at the end of the game.
Yeah.
It's a super different feel than like traditional D&D, where people are like, well, I can't spend that money because I need to buy a new longsword. I need to get a +1. I need to get +1 leather. I can't, so I'm willing to murder everyone here because that's how I'm going to get +2 bracers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I always got frustrated with players that kind of like at a key moment in a session, it's like, maybe like if you're playing a Star Wars game, like the old West End Star Wars, you're at a key moment and it's like, oh man, if they would just use their thermal detonator right now, it would be this awesome epic climax. And they're like, that costs 2,000 credits. I'm not using it.
I can't use that. I can't do that.
And you're like, what?
Why do you have it?
And why do you have it? Just use it. Like, we'll play these characters again and you'll make more money or something. Like, come on, this is awesome. And it was just like, no, it's 2,000 credits. I'm not doing that. And
There's a great meme. There's a great meme of, you sit down the video game and in the tutorial, they're like, the power orbs will give you great ability. Remember to use them wisely. And it's like, oh, never use them. Got it. Well,
now, Chris, I've been talking to you a long time here. Before we go, just real quick, do you have a key piece of game master advice? I know a lot of people who listen to the show are trying to improve running games. Do you have a key piece of game master advice?
So besides read all of the game master advice that we wrote in Mazes.
Okay, well, there you
go. My thing, and I say this all the time to people, is that remember that whatever is the most fun for you and for the players is the correct answer. There are a lot of people that play games in a lot of different ways, and they're all equally valid. And I don't care if you want to play a combat game or you want to play a deep drama game, or it's all about interpersonal relationships. There's a right game for you. But when you're at the table and the situation comes up, you don't need to go look up a rule every time, because what you can just say is, would it be more fun if this happens? If the answer is yes, that's what happens every time. It's what they would do if they were making a movie, and it's what you should do when you're running the game.
I think that's great advice. All right. Well, Chris, where can people learn more about ninth level games and check out some of these pretty cool games that you were talking about?
Well, you can find most of our games at your friendly local hobby shop, your friendly local game store. You can find all of our games at our website, which is 9thlevel.com, ninthlevel.com. Also at ninthlevel.com, you can actually sign up for hosted online play. We actually run for pay hosted online games. So especially if you're looking to try to, branch out, or you want to see if it's a system that you like, you actually have an opportunity there. Most of our games are also available. All of our games are actually available through IPR and a couple of other online retailers.
Indie Press Revolution.
Yes, at Indie Press. They actually also sell Mazes, which Mazes is only available. It's not available digitally at all. And you can see our work in the Level 1 anthology, which by the time this comes out will be available as a PDF off of our website as we get ready for Free RPG Day next year in 2021. So,
yeah. All right. Well, I will make sure that I put links to your website and to your games in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. So anybody who's listening, if you just head over to dicegeeks.com, find the show notes for this episode, you will find links for 9th level games there. Well, Chris, it was a blast talking to you. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thanks, Matt. And thanks for having us.
All right, guys, another show in the books. Man, I had a ton of fun talking with Chris today. I know we got a little old school RPG on you there. I hope you don't mind. Now, head over to dicegeeks.com, and in the show notes for this episode, I have provided links so you can learn all about 9th level games. If you want some free stuff, head over to dicegeeks.com/free. You'll get 10 free dungeon maps. You'll never miss an episode of this show. And each and every Friday, you will get an email from me talking about what I am up to in this mad, mad world of Dice Geeks. You know, at the top of the show in the introduction, I mentioned that I have been doing this show for a long time, and I really need your help. Okay, I really want to keep making this show, but I really need some help from all of you who are listening out there. If you can support the show in some way, I would be immensely grateful. Now, you can do some very simple things. You can tell a friend about the show. You can just email somebody that you know one of the episodes or a link to one of the episodes that you think they would enjoy. You can share or talk about the show on your social media platform of choice. You can also rate, review, or subscribe to the show wherever you are listening to it now. Sometimes that's just pressing a button. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you are in a position to support the show financially, I do have a Patreon. It is patreon.com/dicegeeks. You can go there and see some different goals and levels that I have set up. Any support that I receive through Patreon just lets me know that you guys appreciate this show and want it to continue. So if you would go there, check that out, and if you are able to support the show financially, I mean, that would just be incredible. And I thank you so much for doing that. And I thank my current patrons as well. They are keeping the lights on over here at dicegeeks.com, Tabletop RPG show. I thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you will join me again next Wednesday for another interview. But until then, keep gaming.